Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. Oh. What to say. I can't tell my life story again. I did that yesterday. Nice curtains. Yeah, Luangpor Cha said, just start talking. Because we've been trained in the way Luangpor Cha taught us to teach was to teach from the situation and from the heart rather than from notes. And it's quite an interesting challenge, really, to present something which is reasonable and relevant to a retreat, and yet each day really not know what the heck you're going to say, which is my case right now. Well, I could talk about fear, I suppose, because fear's been my great ajahn this lifetime. And now, like, I'm quite amazed and happy that I can sit in front of a group of people and not know what I'm going to say and not feel self-conscious and not feel nervous. And that to me is a marvelous result of watching self-consciousness and nervousness. And that's rather interesting, isn't it? That by witnessing the very thing that was my greatest source of suffering. I mean, I have other sources of suffering like anger and things like that, but the fear was by far the most central, agonizing part of my life. And by going directly towards that and witnessing it and observing it and inquiring into it and feeling it in the body and knowing all the flavors of fear. I know vanilla, I know chocolate, I know all the angles of fear and all the physical manifestations of fear and anxiety and self-consciousness and so on. In other words, I got a PhD in fear. That the fear ended. I mean, that's kind of magic, isn't it? Because you think that what you should do is like run away from the fear. But obviously running away from fear is fear. So this direct going into one's suffering is the genius of the Buddha's teaching and the genius of his disciples. For me, Luangpor Sumedho, Luangpor Cha, and others who have always encouraged this direct confrontation. Is confrontation the word? Not confrontation, but observation of your very sense of discontent and dis-ease and lack and whatever ways you want to define that. So it's not to do that, you have to somehow uncouple yourself from what we call self-view. This is like, say, when I used to be really afraid of giving talks, I had to, what I would be doing is my mind would be analyzing what I'm going to say in a sort of Viradhammo is afraid kind of way. What am I going to say and what am I going to do? And oh, it's the third, fourth day and I don't know what to say. That's all the papancha and thinking. And that's not really looking at fear, is it? It's abstracted from fear. When I make a comment about the camera, and I say it's a, I don't know, it's a Nikon or it's a good camera. I'm not really seeing the camera. I'm seeing a concept of the camera, and I need concepts to talk and think about. But if I look directly at that visual image, and I just look at it, then it comes to me in its full form, and then I'm knowing in a different way. Both are correct to some extent. So to look at one's dukkha, we have to get past the constant self narratives, the storylines, the thoughts of suffering that arise through the sense of me and mine, and that's the idea of this whole teaching around like the khandhas or the ayatanas, or I call it just stream of consciousness because it's easier. We have these ways that Buddhism chops up our experience to depersonalize it. Now, depersonalize it doesn't mean that you don't experience it. You still, like I still experience a sore arm, yeah? But I can witness the soreness of the arm as an object in awareness. And that's easy to do because it's not really painful now. It's only if I move it, it's painful. It would be more difficult if it was really, really painful, right? Or if I had it like a chronic disease, it'd be more difficult to distance myself from it. But I need to do that if I'm going to understand the dukkha of physical pain. In the case of the fear, it was emotional pain. So I had to constantly and this is the language, I like to use, make conscious the feeling of pain. And I find that language very, very helpful, letting it become conscious. So again, that was counterintuitive because I don't want to look at the pain, at the fear. I want to get rid of it. So in the same way with us, say, whatever suffering state of mind you have, first of all, you have to know what's going on. If you're not recognizing it's going on, you're not in the game, right? So I may know I'm irritated at someone. Oh, that person, they shouldn't be that way. But I'm not, because I'm still in the storyline, I'm not really aware of this irritation as an object. I'm still the subject. And that's the basic idea of non-attachment, non-grasping. Or the word we use, the word for grasping we use is upadana. So there's a difference between kind of knowing that there's some discontent and making it an object in awareness. And that's so important. That's so very important. But that's not like if you feel jealous about someone, you're at one of our interviews and one person is having fabulous enlightenment experiences and you're just falling asleep all the time. You're like, oh God, it's not fair. They just started and I've been at it 20 years and so obviously you're not aware there, but maybe you notice it. Oh gosh. And then you feel guilty. And, I should really be happy for them. I have so much mudita for you. Actually, I don't. So you have to make conscious the way things are. And this seems so very, very simple. And it is a simple idea, but our minds are very complex. So quite often the problem is that we just want to be better people. I mean, that's a good idea. And I don't, it's not a good idea to want to be a bad person. But to want to be a good person is not the same as being aware of jealousy. So making conscious the feeling of jealousy would maybe be quite counterintuitive to your ideal system. Jealousy is not right or anger is not right, but it is as it is. So that really is the first noble truth. Understand the dukkha. The ability to do that then is, I think, the ability then to most simply to get away from the storyline. How would you say storyline in Thai? Papancha. Does everyone know papancha? Does people use that word? The thinking around it. There's a difference between the raw feeling of fear and the, oh, what am I going to say and what am I going to do and what's going to happen? So these exercises of meditation, which I've been sort of recommending, of like noticing the silence of witnessing. You try to apply that then to something more difficult than sound. So we have the sound of the rain, say, almost a little bit, and then you listen to the sound, and you notice the silence of knowing. So I've been encouraging you to try to do that. Try to do that with fear, or anger, or jealousy, or worry, or whatever it is. So if you can't distance yourself from it and seeing it as an object, then you're just always in the foreground. That's why this analogy for me works so well, because we quite often try to fix worry by worrying. We try to get rid of fear by being afraid of it. We might try to fix anger by hating ourselves, and so on and so forth. And that's all through thought, and it's just the same battleground. But getting to the background, that the body feels like this, emotions feel like this, is the step to non-attachment. And then we really see the kind of structure feeling of our dukkha as an object. And that's really all you need to do. It's really all you need to do, because there's no longer attachment. But you need to do that for quite a long time. You know, when I think about, I've put a lot of work into this. It's paid off, but you know, the number of Dhamma talks. Let me see. My first Dhamma talk, actually, I threatened our young Lao monk that he's going to give tonight's talk. And you should have seen his face. He was not a happy puppy. But that happened to me I was trying to remember the date. It should have been 1982, 81. I was a young puppy then. and it was a 9-day retreat in Northumberland. And Luangpor had to leave on day 5. And what? I have to teach this retreat? No, don't leave me. He left me. And I was so afraid. It was just, I mean, it was absurd. I mean, they're all good friends. I knew everyone there. And outside of the context of being out front, there was no problem. A happy-go-lucky guy. And I forgot how to chant Namo Tassa. Namo. But, you know, yeah, I laugh at it now, but I was really afraid. But I did it. There you go. So you think how many talks and retreats I've done since then. But for many years, you know, the kind of anxiety before giving a talk was there. And then you just watch it. Okay, this is fear. So as I got to know it, I knew what to do. And then it was much, much easier. Okay, here we go. Here we go again. Don't know what to say. Then I would try to memorize things and rehearse things. But the talks always sounded false because they weren't from my heart. And sometimes my mind would go blank anyways. I forgot what I wanted to say. So I would just like keep taking the fear. And over time, the fear just ran its course, because any kind of a habit is anicca. And That's its nature. If I give it a time, if I give a chance to run its course. So hence we teach so much about it, patience. Because a lot of times people will say to me, okay, I'm aware of it, now what? In other words, the expectation is because I'm aware of it, it's going to disappear. I mean, I've done my work, right? Why isn't it gone? Well, it's gone because it's not mine. It's not gone because it's not mine. It is as it is, and how long it lasts. So for me, whether it was like a long time or a short time, a manifestation of fear, I couldn't. It's not my business. My business is just to be aware of it. So again, the idea of trust. What do I trust in? In that moment when the unpleasant arises, do I have enough presence of mind to know discontent feels this way, or whatever it is, and then do I have enough trust in awareness to just know it and know it and know it and know it and know it as long as I need to know it as it is until it runs its course. So you also see this in little ways, in not just in the ways of like large habits of mind. You see it in little ways where we're not patient enough just to let it see. So we get right in there and we try to fix it or analyze it. And then there's me again in the foreground, trying to sort it out. So this background sensibility is what I hope we are training in here, not just some states of samadhi which are inspiring and helpful, but a true trust in that which will help you when the bigger concerns of your life arise. Because if you train with the little things, the big things will be taken care of. So once you've understood what non-attachment is, once you've understood what the necessity of patience is about, then those elements begin to allow the vipaka of these energies to cease. Then the kind of coarseness of your practice starts to fall away. And then you start to be able to make very interesting inquiries into the very nature of self, into the nature of silence. So for me, say, as those fearful states began to abate, then the foreground was less and less compelling, and the capacity to then investigate the very nature of awareness became more and more possible. So in the beginning, I couldn't really do that. I mean, I understood it, that awareness, knowing. There was a question from the folk on the online community. One person asked about like witnessing and being aware, and that I use all manner of words for the same thing: witnessing, conscious presence, open awareness, knowing. I just throw those words around. Hopefully it'll hit. One word will hit, but it's the same thing. It's just the feeling I know what's going on now. It's very, very simple. It's like this. So then the whole inquiry into this, I guess, more advanced stage of Buddhism, there is the unconditioned, the uncreated, the unoriginated, the unborn, which to me is a terribly interesting statement. It really is, because it's so different. It's so different from the language we use. Like unconditioned is not a word I ever came across. Well, I guess I would have. I understood it, right? But like the deathless, amata Dhamma, you don't find that in normal discourse, right? unconditioned, and so because let's say once the emotional power of my the coarser part of my conditioning began to wane. So the lustful states of mind, the angry states of mind, and especially the fearful states of mind, then the mind has more pliability. And I think in terms of like samadhi, I think you have to recognize that maybe that's a part of samadhi too, that it's not just your building up of the strengths of samadhi, but also that you've just endured and witnessed to the negativity of the mind, that now the mind has like a stability and a strength. And so that work with the coarser parts of your kamma has created more samadhi. So it hasn't just been about the cessation of fear, it's also been the cultivation of parami, right? The cultivation of the parami of patience, the cultivation of sustained presence, of panya. All of that is being built as you're struggling with the first noble truth and the four noble truths. And then as that is in place, you get less fooled by the thinking mind about about the sense of self. That doesn't delude you so much. It's still there. It's still there. And then the kind of teachings that Luangpor Sumedho gives about the gap between thoughts, that becomes more apparent. And you see that the sense of Viradhammo as an entity or a person is a thought. Now, consciousness or presence is not a thought, but it's also not Viradhammo. Like if I say I am consciousness, consciousness just is. Presence, awareness just is. I can't find. Yeah, I was asking you, Vibhu, and I said, I like you look like if you feel like I can sit here and listen to sound. And then I can ask myself, okay, there is sound and there is knowing. Now, is there a listener? Is there like an entity called me? Are there two things? There's sound and me. Now, there's certainly consciousness and awareness, but there's this thing called me, because me, if we talk about Attavada, as we were talking about, theories, is the idea that there is this fixed center, an entity. So then I do that. Now you can do that when your mind has some clarity. You can do that kind of question. So I listen, and okay, where is the me? Where's that extra? Where's that second bit? I said there's the sound. All I find is there's the knowing of sound. So you can't see there's nothing, but I can't say there's Viradhammo. You get what I mean? So how does Viradhammo arise? Viradhammo arises as, you idiot, you fell down. Or, what am I going to say tomorrow? Or, I hope Amara Siri doesn't see my arm. Or, it's thinking. And once you see the gap between thinking, you see, well, when there is no thought, where's Viradhammo? Now, I'm not saying there's nothing. There is consciousness. There is awareness. And so the kind of question I put to you in one of the meditations, I think, you establish awareness. It's like this. So is there an outer limit? Can't find it. Is there a boundary? Is it like 40 foot over that way? Is there a bound? No. Is there a center, awareness? Is there a center, fixed point? No. So that's the kind of inquiry which where it gets interesting once the heavy kilesa go, because now you're inquiring into the very language of Nibbana. You kind of, you can't, I don't say you're looking at Nibbana like you're looking at a painting or something like that. It's not the same, but you're inquiring into the unconditioned, the uncreated, the unoriginated, the unborn. And that language comes forward, and I think that practice comes forward because the barami, I think, is in place. The gross kilesa have gone, the mind has stability, and there's curiosity. And then, like, what was I saying? I was saying, like, things like, go to sound again. I listen to sound. And then I say, okay, that's changing. What's unchanging? And there it is. There's the stillness of being. There's the stillness of knowing. And that isn't an experience. That's to me is the background. That's the background. Unconditioned. So is it conditional? So I'm just kind of talking about how I do this kind of inquiry, but now rather than being in the foreground, I kind of understand how to operate in the foreground. Now there's enough presence of mind, and I've always been curious about these things, but now the stability of mind can look at that. And if we're only in the foreground, then I think we're only doing psychology. We're not doing transcendence. We're not doing nibbana. And I think a lot of modern practices of mindfulness are more like being functionally competent, being psychologically balanced, which are good things. And perhaps that's what I was doing when I was looking at my over-exaggerated self-consciousness and fears, because they were over-exaggerated. They made no sense to time and place, but there they were. Then maybe that was the psychological work I had to do. But once that's done, is that it? Is the life that I'm looking for just something that is free from fear? Well, it is, but that gives me an avenue into the kind of deep silence of the mind, which takes me back to what I was saying yesterday and my curiosity and hunger and so on. So in this retreat, say, I'm getting there, I'm saying something, right? You know, all the time am I saying, what are you going to say? Where are you going to go with this? It's interesting watching your own mind talk. Anyway, where was I? I was looking at the clock. So on this retreat, if you get like these coarser kinds of upwellings of emotion or self-doubt or anger or grief or loneliness or remorse, you know, we can get some pretty powerful stuff coming into the mind, then that's your work. That's where you're building parami. And don't worry about the person next to you who hasn't moved for 6 hours and seems to be enlightened. That's their problem. You know, you work with what you got. And then that is a kind of very good part of the practice, because again, you're doing two things. You're building parami. You are actually abiding with the background, and you're allowing these grosser and more difficult kinds of kilesa to run their course because they have a life. And I don't know why. I sometimes I think it's because my family were refugees in the war, and maybe that's why the fear was there. Or maybe I killed 6 rabbits in a past lifetime. I'm not sure. I don't know, but there it was. And it doesn't really matter where it came from. It was there. Maybe 7 rabbits. Okay. So if that, you know, if that is coming up into your mind, you don't have to figure it out. Why is this here? Why, you know, I don't know why it's in, because then you're not with it. You're in the foreground, not the background. So it's not a matter of fixing or figuring out or analyzing, it's trusting in awareness. And if you trust in awareness and you have patience, then those conditions are anicca. They're not you, they're impermanent. Don't grasp them, they're running their course. So you're building the capacity for awareness, sustained awareness. And if there aren't any kind of like really strong things, and your mind has some kind of sense of settledness, then try to really move towards no thought. Because you can feel, you can be sitting and feeling pretty sabai, but your mind's still kind of muttering away in a low level way. It's not like the screaming voices of fear. It's just the little muttering voices of, I don't know, blah, 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 blah. It's nothing big, but the mind is still not still. It's still kind of engaged with the foreground. So then you start contemplating things like stillness. What does stillness feel like? No thought. No thought. And really getting to that space where the mind isn't picking up thoughts. You're not getting rid of thought, because that's dosa, that's violence, that's vibhava-tanha. And it's subtle. So you're putting suggestions into your mind according to the kind of karma you're facing. So with the fear, I didn't have to do much. It was like in my face. I just had to say, keep breathing. Simple. But when the fear's not there, or gross things are not there, you have to say other kinds of things like no thought, really gentle. Effort is like that. Sometimes effort, like the effort I suggested, was it this morning about the breathing and dullness. That's very coarse effort, because dullness is a very coarse kilesa or nivarana. You need to put energy into to do something very obvious and very coarse. When your mind is settled, then it doesn't need much persuasion. You just have to coach it a little bit. So then you say things like stillness, and then wait, or even that, just you say, just wait, because your mind wants to achieve something or do something. So if you are interested in like the Buddha's teachings, it seems to me you have to be interested in anicca, dukkha, anatta, but you also have to be interested in the unconditioned, because that's why the Buddha taught anicca, dukkha, anatta, so that we would shift our attention away from experience in the foreground to the silence of the background. So we're not always just trying to fix things. In fact, we're never really trying to fix things. They fix themselves. Finally, I think to do this work, to me, I keep coming back to the heart chakra, because this, I call it work, don't I? It's noble work. It really is. It doesn't come without blood, sweat, and tears or things like that. But I do feel it needs heart. It has to be done with a sense of caring, and maybe loving is too strong a word, because if I'm just kind of grinding out, trying to get somewhere, I don't really welcome it into my mind. So any way the Brahma Viharas are developed, any way you can bring up gratitude. A lot of people start their practice with just remembering their teachers. Like if you just look at the way we do our chanting, although it's very formulaic and it's very cultural, we do pay homage to the Buddha first thing, don't we? Now, what could that do for the mind? Well, if you did it as a mantra, then it's a sound. But if you do it as a heartfelt feeling, you could use the Buddha, you could use Luangpor Cha, you could use Luangpor Sumedho, and you bring the image up into your mind, and you have, oh gosh, thank you. Thank you so much. and that sincere gratitude then affects the way you pay attention, because your heart is now dwelling in the space of gratitude rather than in the space of desire. And gratitude is the end of desire, isn't it? One way, the end of desire. So when you bring your mind to any of the Brahma Viharas, to the sense of metta or karuna or mudita, upekkha. They're all heartfelt, gratitude. And then you begin your practice from there. Then you're not beginning your practice from desire. You're not trying to get something. And that's very important because it's hard to make effort without trying to get something. And why do it if you're not going to get something out of it, right? We do get something out of it, but that comes more from the openness of attention rather than from trying to get somewhere in time. A lot like in these pujas we do, the chanting of the loving kindness chants, try to take those and make them really heartfelt, really like get your heart there. And that's a really good way to start your meditation. And then you're in a really good space. And then you kind of work from there. So tomorrow, we're going to disappear after breakfast. And then I'll be back, hopefully for the evening talk. If not, that'll be it. So please do no revolutions when I'm gone. Okay. And no karaoke or etc. But what on we have these 9 days, 10 days, whatever. And there is a building up of the capacity to witness and the capacity to be in the background. And you want to really honor that because you don't get these chances very often. So do like really be self-motivated and create the barami now, these 10 days that will carry on. I mean, when you leave the retreat. And then we'll see what the doctors say about this old arm. Okay, I'll leave that for reflection.